I'm Kurt Spall. I'm thrilled to be your host today for this discussion with three esteemed panelists who bring a wealth of experience and expertise in this space. Pronix is a leader in technology solutions and has partnered with Kore.ai, a pioneer in AI and automation, to bring this event live to you, showcasing their collaboration and how that can drive innovation forward. So please note, we will leave time at the end for questions, for your audience questions. So please post those into the chat window. We'll try and get to those as many of those as we can towards the end of the session. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Let's get started with some introductions. So to our panelists, gentlemen, welcome. We're very excited to have you here. Could you just start with just a brief introduction of yourself? Let's start with you, Gopi.
Hey folks, my name is Gopi Polavarapu. I'm the Chief Solution Officer at Kore.ai. So we're here trying to productize AI using our platform and building solutions for various industries and functions within a company.
Great. Sami, you want to go next?
I'm Sami Huovilainen. I run a data science team at Citi, US Personal Banking. I've been in this field for almost 25 years. My first 5 years with JP Morgan Chase, and now 20 years at Citi.
All right. Karthik?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Karthik Josyula. I'm the global leader for engineering and innovation platforms at Kore.ai. It's been an exciting journey. I've been in the industry for 18 years, working with data in and out. So yeah, beautiful transformation, but yeah, excited to be in the panel.
Right. Yeah, thanks for those introductions. So let's dive right in with a set of questions. And this first one is really around transformative impact. And I'd love to hear from each of you. Really the question is, how is generative AI reshaping the landscape of customer and employee experiences today? And what significant changes do you foresee in the next few years? Let's start with you, Gopi.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So generative AI, most of you probably know the technology. ChatGPT made a big news about it a year ago. So the way I see it is twofold. One is the transformational impact and what's the market impact. So we're looking at both of them and what are the pros and cons of those technologies. So I'll go through 3 points that we're going to talk about. The first one is generative AI. Obviously, we all know it's able to create content on its own. It simulates scenarios, generative insights. It can fundamentally reshape pretty much how the business and customer operations are done. So that is how people are using this technology. So when it comes to transformational impact, it obviously enhances creativity, automates tasks, it personalizes user experiences. If I go into content creation, it's quite remarkable where ChatGPT can actually write content. You give the basic prompt, it goes back and builds the content the way you want it. Now with generative AI, AGI is specifically where it's multi-modal, where it can generate audio, video, text, images. So creating content is much easier compared to having a big studio trying to create the content. So the biggest beneficiary of this is obviously the people that actually generate content, the creative people. So the next thing I see, there's a big use cases in healthcare where any medical research in terms of generating hypotheses for a drug simulation, simulating particular drug interactions. I'm seeing a huge acceleration with generative AI in the healthcare space. Obviously, Core is center of customer service. So we're seeing AI chatbots that are really personalizing for end customer interactions or employee interactions. And generative AI has really transformed that from a transformation perspective and ability to build the bot from which used to take like months to literally in hours right now in deploying these kind of capabilities. Coming back to the market impact. So McKinsey talked about this could impact anywhere from $2 to $4 trillion in terms of economy across the globe for the top 63 use cases. They identified 63 use cases and they said, okay, what does that mean in terms of dollar savings? We're looking at $2 to $4 trillion. I've not seen a technology after internet that has actually created this kind of opportunity for every one of us. So that is the big thing that we're saying. But as a tech, we're seeing investments in this space that are on the north of hundreds of billions of dollars by the VC space. Any company that has an AI these days is getting funding primarily because powered by generative AI, and they all see the impact of this. So the startups are really investing in it. Large companies are adopting the technology, like Microsoft quickly adopted OpenAI, even though it's not innovated within Microsoft, and they've built Copilot solutions. And I'm seeing ServiceNow, Workday, pretty much every company in the space is using the tech. So I believe this is gonna go. The last one, I'll pause with that, which is obviously any tech has two sides to the coin. I'm only talking about the positives. So elections are coming next year. So you need to know what is real, what is fake. It's really hard, right? So there is a downside with the tech, which is how do you know whether it is the real person talking with the deep fakes coming up? So there is some regulation needed in order to protect this technology getting into false hands. So governments are acting on it to control this thing with watermarks, with things that actually can be used ethically. So this technology, if used ethically, no problem with it. If it is not, then the side effects of it, government should step in and control those things. So that's about what I'm seeing in the industry at a macro level. Back to you, Kurt.
Yeah, thank you, Gopi. Sami, love to get your...
Yeah, I could maybe pile on to that a little bit. So from in financial services industry, I'd say that from employee experience perspective, the code generation is one where we see a big use for Gen AI transformation. Employees in general in service functions benefit from things like knowledge search, basically combining lots of data sources into one, synthesizing the content, and then summarizing, saving a lot of time and effort. And from customer service, customer perspective, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think the one big area is customer service automation. So containment of the phone calls that customers make, servicing those much more intelligently and faster. And in case of humans end up servicing the customers, then Gen AI can definitely help reduce the handle time and make the actual servicing and problem solving much smoother. So we'll talk about those points a little bit later.
Thanks. Karthik, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I totally agree with Gopi and Sami. And Gopi brought a really great point that understanding what's real and what's fake, that's very, very critical. Coming from a kitchen and bath industry, I can throw an example, right? Like if we want to renovate your bathroom, and if the designers wants to create a template to work on it, it's a huge effort of like 4 to 5 weeks and a continuous rendering process. But with Gen AI, the designers can right away work with the template. Like they can throw the SKUs, they can throw the combination of the color panels, and then a design is already rendered, and they can work on that as a foundation. So understanding the use cases, where to use Gen AI and where to not use Gen AI is very, very important. And as leaders, I think that we should be driving more of that.
Great perspectives, particularly your points on just the magnitude of the impact of this transformational technology. Let's move into personalization. So certainly, creating hyper-personalized experiences has been a part of digital transformation for a long time now, but Gen AI now onto the scene. Could you share a couple of successful case studies where Gen AI has personalized customer interactions dramatically? So Gopi, we'll go to you on that one, and then Karthik, would love to get your perspective.
Yeah, I'll pick some examples that are generic that we all know. We can go and test it right now live. So for example, Walmart talked about how they're using generative AI. So they made a big announcement during the NFL Super Bowl that you can go to their search engine and type, plan for my football watch party. And generative AI went back and looked at all the products you need to have a football party. Whether you need chips, you need soft drinks, you need beer, whatever the products you need, it's created the shopping cart for you, which earlier on people probably don't know what to buy, what not to buy. So that is a cool use case of creating a shopping list for a customer. And some other use case I'm learning is, for example, I was speaking with somebody at Bass Pro. They're talking about customers typically go and buy, they call them experiential stores, which is people are coming there for experiences. Let's say you want to go for saltwater fishing somewhere in East Coast. What do you need? What do you need to buy? What is the gear that you need to go get? what licenses requirements do you have. So all of this is possible with generative AI. So the way I'm seeing it is planning events, vacations. I've seen Expedia and Marriott started using Search AI where you can plan your vacation. I plan my vacation with my family of 4 in Caribbean. You don't even give which country, what days, and basic things, and it'll go and come back to you with various packages that not just includes your flight tickets and hotels. It also looks at tours, travels, the whole experience that you need to get. And that is how companies are using generative AI to personalize those things so that you can use this technology to upsell more products or provide tailored personalized experience to the customers based on their pre-existing conditions. The last one we're seeing in the customer service is obviously it's getting hyper personalized by looking at CDP. If customers have invested in their CDP platforms, we can go back and look at what they purchased in the past, ask them for customer feedback, how the product was, what are the pros and cons of the product, how can they help better. So it's creating that human experiences is what I'm saying generative AI will start evolving. It's not just customer experience. You're enabling both employees and customers at the same time to drive that human experience. That's basically what I'm seeing with generative AI driving personalization techniques.
Karthik, love to hear kind of your perspective on this.
Oh, I can share a personal story. I had a personal experience. So way back in 2018, I was designing Converse shoes for myself, and I was trying to bring all the nice color combinations, and I want to give a nice tag at the sole of my Converse shoes. Now, if I put Gen AI on top of that, I'm a big Iron Man fan. So how about having an Iron Man themed Converse shoes or sneakers, right? So if you take this idea and put in each and every product that a customer will buy, right? In the retail, your apparels, your sneakers, your coffee mugs, your watches, your pens, notebooks, you can gamify that, and customers can take the application, throw their ideas, create their own personalized item, and they own it. So you're converting customers into designers who can design their own product, and now you can start gamifying that. So with Gen AI, I see a very broad range of use cases, especially the customer experience, and gamifying the purchasing pattern of the customers.
That's great. Yeah, impressive to see and hear about these real world applications that are out there. So let's transition to the employee experience. So how do AI-driven tools foster creativity among employees? Could you provide examples from your experience? So Karthik, let's go back to you on that one.
Yeah, one good use case is marketing. A marketing analyst needs to understand where their customers are coming from, what are the frequent products that they're buying, geographically, what's your hotspot for a particular product or hotspot for your loyal customers. So generating marketing content for each and every individual segment, when you throw the demographic and the psychographic metrics on top of that, it's way complex. But when you imagine if you throw all these parameters into a Gen AI model, and with those parameters, Gen AI model can start generating a marketing content specific to a product, specific to a customer segment, specific to a geographical location, half of the job is done. So employees can, especially the marketers or the marketing analysts, they can take this platform and leverage the advantages of the Gen AI capabilities.
Gopi, love to hear you kind of jump in here and talk about employee empowerment.
Yeah, so what I've kind of said, Kore performed a survey about a month ago. So I'm trying to understand what are employees doing in a day in a life kind of thing. So what we've noticed is 23% of their time in a day is wasted just doing repeated stuff like following up, scheduling something, finding information, creating content, sending a proposal. So I'll give an example of a user story we did for a customer. The use case could be if you're a salesperson trying to work on a proposal to a company and you have a roadmap dependency. So imagine what would take in a general practice is you schedule a call with your product teams and engineering, find out the dates, and then go back and write the content about it. What we have done with our latest offering called EVA, which is all about, it looks at HubSpot, it looks at all the meetings that happened with those customers, it looks at the follow-up events. You can go back and talk to Jira and find out the product dependencies and roadmap and bring it all together and write your proposal in 15 minutes. So imagine the kind of productivity savings that comes to that salesperson who's working on a proposal, which used to take a day or two to get those things out. They're able to do it in 15 minutes using generative AI. So that's the kind of the power of generative AI, that by using it for the right use in an enterprise setting will help tremendously. And that's on the sales side, but we're also looking at functional automation. Like, for example, you as an employee always call HR or IT for problems. HR typically during the benefits time, like November, December, everybody calls for their benefits. HR is super busy trying to clarifying their questions. You can use generative AI. All you need to do is put those documents, connect it back to your teams. They can ask any question and the system comes back with the responses, which is all about reducing the effort that these people get on a day in a life basis to support their employees. So all the support functions, whether it's legal function, whether this is HR function, IT, procurement, finance. So we're seeing a broad set of use cases coming across enterprises to solve not only the employee problems, but also the functional load of supporting the employees. So I'm seeing both those benefits. And the help desk automation is something we're also seeing, right? Where help desks are having, co-pilots available to them, where it's kind of telling you what to say, how to say, so that you don't want to get into legal trouble on what is the right language should I use in Germany versus the right language I use here in California versus in New York. So it gives you the exact language that the HR needs to say, so that they don't put themselves into a risk, but especially when they're unionized employees, right? So those are some of the use cases we're seeing.
Wow. Yeah. Clearly AI a game changer in employee creativity and productivity. Let's talk a little bit about considerations here. And Gopi, love to get your perspective on this. Clearly adoption of Gen AI varies widely across organizations. You have firsthand experience with adoption in multiple companies across industries. What considerations should business and technology leaders keep in mind when adopting Gen AI?
I think the bigger thing is it's anything new coming in. When cloud came up, every industry pushed back saying, I cannot put my data in cloud. It is the security that comes to the mind, because chief security officer is the one that's holding the guardrails. And I'm learning some companies are actually restricting generative AI within their four walls because they're worried about the impacts of it. Where Samsung had an incident of their code showing up in ChatGPT. So they're all worried about it. So the only way you can overcome that fear is actually start using it in pilot phases, learn the technology in a controlled environment. So start using it for internal use case for employees before you put it at the customer front, so that you're reducing the risk of adopting. Because if you don't, somebody else will adopt and they'll leapfrog you. So the concerns that any C-level people that I'm hearing are around security, data governance, privacy, IP protection. Especially, you don't know when you're using content generation, is this image coming from somebody that's patented? So all of these things they need to be worried about. Or it's using, for example, in the content, it uses some of the movie dialogues. People actually come back and sue you. Disney will start looking at their content. So every company is trying to protect their IP, so that you don't want to use some content that is violating somebody's IP. So that is another concern people have. Controllability of AI, which is all about hallucinations. You can't really control what the AI could say. So Air Canada had an issue, Chevy had an issue. So people are concerned about how do I control those things. So which is where you need to kind of look at how to use this technology with the proper guardrails. Cost is another thing, accuracy is another one that we're looking at. So these are the high level things that I'm hearing from companies that are worried about deploying this tech. But there are ways to solve this technology problems using an enterprise-grade platform like Kore.ai.
Great insight. And it leads to a follow-on question around the challenges of integrating this new capability. So would like to kind of get back to you, Sami, and Karthik as well. So Sami, maybe you can lead off here. Executive at a large financial institution. What are the biggest challenges in integrating Gen AI, and how can they be overcome?
Yep, perfect. So let me decompose this question into people, processes, and technology. I will later talk about the model governance, which is one big challenge to itself. But in terms of people, this is clearly a very big leap from any previous innovation in AI and AI ML. So the generative AI is moving super fast. It is also touching a much broader audience than as compared to the sort of like an older modeling technique, so to say. So for example, in customer service, everybody has to be aware and understand what is the art of the possible of Gen AI as we collectively solve these problems. So keeping up with the latest and greatest and understanding the art of the possible and understanding the risks clearly is important, and it's one of the challenges. Now, in terms of processes, because many of these, unlike conventional AI, ML, and sort of marketing type optimization and targeting, the Gen AI use cases tend to be impacting business processes. At least in big financial institutions, we have plenty of very manual, human-driven processes. And as we re-engineer those and as we automate them with Gen AI, it is a huge undertaking to just shift from the old process into the new one. So I would say that it's the business process transformation and not dropping the ball on while doing that is a big challenge. It's clearly well worth doing it, and organizations build muscle while solving multiples of these. But I would say, especially the first time around, it is a big challenge, and it tends to take more than one would anticipate in terms of effort. And then last and probably the clearest is the technology, right? So with the conventional data science methods, it was easy to usually find compute. In the case of generative AI, to train the models, we need to gobble up a lot of GPU time. Not easy to come by. We all know that. We need to find production environment where we can cost effectively and with the acceptable latency implement these capabilities. So that's clearly a challenge, and ongoing monitoring of these capabilities is clearly important. So we make sure that whereas in the development you may not see hallucinations and toxicity, how do we make sure that we have a production environment where we can continuously monitor these via, call it a dashboard or cockpit, where we can get alerts in case something goes haywire. So we'll talk about the model governance shortly, but I would say these are three big challenges that I'm seeing firsthand as we are going through some of the transformation.
Karthik, what are you experiencing in terms of integration challenges?
Yeah, as an engineering and innovation platform leader, I would love to talk on this all day. Half of the integration challenges with Gen AI could be solved with the proper alignment with all the cross-functional and the other enterprise teams. For example, you have your enterprise architecture office, you have your cloud integrations team, you have your privacy team, you have security team. So I would say start with the POC, define the POC, define its outcome, align with the business and align with all these other teams across the organization to make sure that what we are trying to implement in Gen AI. And with that, then we need to identify what was the right data that's used for the POC. So then you bring in your customer privacy team, you bring in your data security team, bring in your cloud integrations, make sure that the right data is flowing in with the right I would say maybe hashing methodologies or your encryptions, encrypting your PII information. Make sure all that checks are done before, and then start working on the data into the Gen AI model, and then make sure that how are you communicating the output of the Gen AI model to the business? How are you serving the output of the Gen AI model to the business? Again, you need to have a clear handshake between all these teams to make sure that everyone are on the same page. So these definitely will help to reduce a lot of challenges. It should not be a surprise to all other teams the other team had already started, we went forward with this Gen AI implementation and we are not ever. Now you see a public VNet open already, and that's a threat to the organization's security. So making sure that everyone are aligned, having a clear roadmap, and having a proper RACI, who's responsible, accountable, who's consultant, who's informed on the RACI chart is very, very important. And this approach had really helped us to pace forward, and we had successfully wrapped up 2 pilots, and we are aggressively moving into the actual dev, test, and prod environments.
great. Very practical advice, and certainly navigating these challenges is absolutely crucial for successful integration. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the ethical considerations. So a big risk around Gen AI, certainly the outputs. We hear about hallucinations or outputs that bring up ethically related issues. I'd like to kind of hear from you, Sami, and you, Gopi, as well. What ethical considerations should companies prioritize as AI becomes more embedded in business processes? Let's start with you, Sami.
Yeah, certainly. So let me maybe date myself and go back maybe 20 years and take to the days of logistic regressions. Back then, even we had requirements of excluding variables, non-permissible variables. We had partnership with model risk governance, but then of course there were only a handful of models. But now fast forward maybe 10 years from then, and we were now taking the logistics into gradient boosting machines, and soon enough to neural nets and deep learning methods. So I would say like one common denominator for all this is that we have had close partnership with fair lending, legal, privacy, and model risk governance all along. We always wanted to have statistically sound and fair and robust models. Now, what always happens when you have a cycle of innovation, you need to ponder what are the ways by which I can test and ensure that my models are indeed doing what they are intended to do. So when innovation happens, like I said, we partner with internal parties. We have a very close relationship with the regulators, external counsels. So we basically have to come up with the acceptable, defensible, and robust methods for, like I said, ensuring the soundness of these models. Now, I would say, coming to the Gen AI times, of course, now this is a little bit up to new to all of us. I would say we need to. It is clearly much bigger innovation step as compared to those that I've seen in the past. So the how to continuously and real time ensure there's no hallucinations, toxicity, and all the other concerns. It is a bigger effort, but at the same time, with the right partnership, it is a solvable problem. And in a way, we create a proper tests for each component models in a solution. We stress test the whole system to make sure that you can't really instigate the system to go haywire and become rude and what have you. I would also say that with Citi, we back in 2019, we were one of the first banks to introduce and implement ethical guidelines corporate-wide, and of course those evolve. And 2021, we launched a global AI COE, which ensures that we implement and deploy these soundness and model controls in a consistent fashion across the bank. So I would say it's definitely not as easy, quote unquote, as previous innovation, but it is a solvable problem. But it requires a lot of partnership and need to not forget the outside in view, because there's a lot happening, like I said earlier, in this space, as we all know.
Yeah, Gopi, what's your kind of point of view, ethical considerations?
I mean, happy to hear corporations like Citi are actually developing their own ethical processes. I do see government stepping in a broader AI context, because the executive order signed by President Biden almost a year ago now, NISC started publishing standards around ethical use of AI and how they actually will control these things. Department Labor will start asking for data on how many jobs have been automated. So there's a bunch of those regulations coming soon to make sure there is ethical practices being followed across corporations. So those are some of the things I'm saying, and I'm seeing same thing following at Europe right now, where Europe is actually issuing ethical guidelines on how to use AI in corporations. But coming to corporations, obviously they need to have their own ethical practices before they actually go and use this technology. But from a vendor perspective, what we're doing is we're giving every guardrail that we can get on the planet to reduce toxicity, anonymize PII, reduce bias in selecting a profile when you're applying for a job, or anything that's harmful, that's not good. fact checking of facts, like using RAG models initially. So the way I always say is create your pragmatic roadmap approach where start leveraging RAG models, get the data in order, because a lot of the companies are not ready with the data yet, right? There you can ingest into a model. So first thing is you need to learn first and collect the data. As you collect the data, so what we do is we enable agents on the contact center side, on the customer service side, learn before you create self-service solutions so that your contact center employees are validating everything as a human in the loop. At the same time, when you think you're ready with your data, you can start ingesting those things to your models and then push those models out. But we're seeing companies like Citi are adopting RAG models first and then slowly building their own models using the data collected.
Great. Yeah, great insight. Certainly maintaining the ethical standards is essential for building trust and integrity. Let's go next to success metrics. Certainly organizations are focused on capturing measurable and impactful results as a critical part of any transformational initiative. How should companies measure the success of Gen AI implementations, and what metrics are you finding are most valuable? Let's start with you, Karthik, and then Sami, we'll go to you next.
Absolutely. So again, I'll reiterate the point, right? Like defining the POC or defining what are we going to achieve out of a Gen AI initiative is really, really important. So putting a technology outcome and a business outcome on paper is really important. With that, we will know like what metrics we need to capture, and then we can continuously have iterative sessions to see where this metric is going. Are we moving up the needle or are we going down the needle? And definitely that will help us to calculate like what's my return on investment. When I say return on investment, it could be time, it could be cost. And when we know Gen AI, they need super high compute for us, like the number of tokens that get used for each and every prompt. So it's going to be expensive when we look the Gen AI use case as a scale in the organization level. So putting your right metrics on place to measure the business outcome, and then continuously evaluating that metric to see how we are moving, and then putting the cost and the time metric into the equation will definitely help organizations to build a more scalable and a more efficient Gen AI initiatives in the organization.
Sami, what are you seeing out there in terms of success measures?
Yeah, I would say that maybe taking a step back, in our case, in order to get a use case prioritized, we need to have a pretty viable and extensive use case created, basically financially clearly justified. Now, the metric thereby can be, let's say, expense reduction. It could be average handle time reduction and what have you. But it is a business problem that has most likely been known to us for a long time. But it is now with the Gen AI that we can actually attempt to solve that problem. So now basically the whole justification for the use case becomes the success metric. And now there's going to be an executive level commitment for these because these use cases require substantial investment and thereby these investments and the returns will be tracked very closely. So what then happens is that we commit, we get a executive level alignment, and we report back these the success metrics. It's not it's often not just one, but like I said, would be average handle time reduction, expense reduction, revenue. But very important to have the alignment early on that this is what we are gunning for, and it will come back every month as a collective team to say that how are we tracking against these objectives.
Great, yeah, certainly a vital aspect of any technological adoption. So let's look ahead in the future of digital transformation now in a Gen AI world. So in what ways will Gen AI accelerate digital transformation in the next decade? So, and who stands to benefit the most? Love to hear from you on this one, Gopi.
So as I said, there was a study done by McKinsey. So McKinsey said 50% of the current work that's being done is going to get automated anywhere from 2030 to 2050, right, or 2060. So the midpoint being 2045, and that is a report they talked about. In that report, they gave about 15 different functions that's going to get hugely impacted. And the bigger one is obviously customer support, software development, both from a product perspective as well as from IT perspective. And I'm also seeing sales and marketing getting a lot of automation because of the things that I talked about with content generation. As you get down, the other use cases are like HR automation. People are already talking about skill-based hiring. Bots being able to select candidates automatically and screening them and interviewing them. So we're already seeing this tech being used. But if you see the next 10 years, I see all of these functional things that are in a support role are getting automated one way or the other. Whether it's augmented first, then automated later, but people are starting the journey now. So I do see those functions getting automated in the next 15 years for sure. What we need to do is we need to reskill the people to use those people to do other things that are driving top line rather than looking at repetitive things. How do you make people productive? How do you give tools to your employees? One other thing I'm also seeing is this is a fascinating time where I'm seeing 4 generations of workforce is actually working in a company, starting from baby boomers to Gen Z now. So Gen Z and millennials have always used technology, especially Gen Z. These are the people that actually used Siri and Google for their day in a life, right? So they're expecting this tool to be used. Otherwise, they don't see this company being a feasible company for them to work for. So it's the time for the companies to adopt now in order to attract the younger talent to create a future. And the future of the workforce is looking for tools like this to make them more productive in what they do, because that's what they do today. When they do their homeworks today, that's how they do a lot of their research. Enterprises have to adopt this tech rather than trying to stay away from it. So that's what I see is a huge adoption of Gen AI in the next 3 to 5 years from augmentation perspective, and then slowly they'll get into automation in the next 5 to 10 years.
Fascinating. Yeah, potential for certainly cross-industry transformation is truly exciting.
Yeah.
So let's go to leadership a bit and talk about that. Certainly, I think everyone would agree the adoption of Gen AI requires strong leadership, vision. How can leaders foster a culture that embraces AI while valuing human intuition, the human element? So, Sami, would love to get your perspective on that.
I would say that the number one observation I have over the past few months, getting deep into this field in terms of building real life solution, is that these have far more cross-functional as compared to the call it old school data science or targeting tool development efforts. Like in the old days, it was easy for me to say that here is a 0-1 flag, which is customer either responds or does not, and send the data scientist off to completely an algorithm and then implement it in the system. But now let's go back to the customer service automation example. So it is very hard for me to tell my data scientist how to train the computer to have a conversation with the consumer, because I don't know how to have that conversation with the consumer. So guess what? I need to bring the subject matter experts from the customer service center who can guide the training. So it is very collaborative. I already talked about the challenges of key challenges, and one of them being technology and from integration perspective. So now you have humans from the operations and technology and us in data science tied at the hip, solving a problem. And of course, there's then broader transformation teams that need to, like I said earlier, to change the actual business process as these solutions go live. So again, you need to foster a culture of collaboration more so than ever. I feel like these lines of any kind of silos need to be broken down. It doesn't matter exactly. Often I feel like what team are you coming from? There has to be a collaborative team marching towards the one goal, and each person bringing their wealth of experience and eventually translating that. I guess the data scientists are the ones who eventually translate this collective knowledge into the models and algorithms, and which are then implemented in partnership with tech, and like I said earlier, monitored for the success. But if I had to pick one, it definitely had to be collaboration.
Yeah, it's good insight. Yeah, certainly a crucial balance in maintaining the human values in the mix. So let's switch over and take some audience questions here. We have quite a few in the chat, so I'm going to throw those out there for our panelists. We talked a bit about the key considerations, but love to get kind of everybody else's perspective on, again, key considerations when implementing generative AI for business automation to ensure alignment with organizational goals and values. So anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, I can definitely take that. So business, definitely when we look at a business, we have multiple domains, right? For example, I can go with a simple use case like call centers. Customers are calling our call center for inquiry about any product. So definitely there's a lot of time that's spent with each and every call. And the analysts on the other side, or the telecallers on the other side who are attending each and every call, they don't have much intelligence or insights to analyze which call is priority. Definitely business wants to bring down the cost per call metric for sure. So now when you have this particular business metric, which is clearly driven down to each and every level of the business unit, so everyone will be focusing more on how to bring down that metric. So with that, what happens is now you can bring in a solution which perfectly aligns with the business outcome. So like put a lead scoring model which can generate some insights on and tell that which call is more priority for the telecaller to pick and address, how much time they should spend interacting with this customer if there is a high lead scoring model. And the Gen AI model can also generate a template, like what are the right questions to ask and how they can direct the caller to a sale. So that will reduce the time that the caller can spend with the telemarketer can spend with the caller, and it will give a precise content to drive that positive conversation towards a sale. So now we started with the business metric, and we started thinking through like how can Gen AI help drive that business metric. So I think that's a very high level approach, how we should bring in the methodologies that will definitely help the business.
Okay. Sami, any add-ons to that from your perspective, key considerations?
No, I think Karthik covered it pretty broadly and well. So.
Okay, all right. Let's go to another question here. This one's around security. So what are the security implications of using Gen AI in business processes? Anybody want to take that one?
Kenneth answered that these are the same things that every executives are worried about, which is hallucination is a big one, toxicity is a big one, ethical uses of AI is a big one. So data governance, people are worried about how do you control the data within the four walls, especially the enterprise data. So these are the primary concerns that everybody should be worried about in how you implement generative AI to the effective use of the use case that you're trying to get to hit your metrics. So essentially that's what it is. And for example, if you use a model like OpenAI, which may have like far more accuracy, far more ability to understand the context, but at the same time, you're also putting things at risk. So it's a trade-off choice between how you want to use the tech, how much extent the risk is. So you need to assess the risk and then pick the model. But having model orchestration allows you to use the model, get the best of the both worlds. So how do you get the good things that are there in the models, various models, and then put them to good use without compromising your data security and data governance?
Good insight.
Yeah, I would maybe I'll add there a little bit like when I mentioned the, let's say, customer service automation solution. So behind the scenes, there could be maybe 5 to 7 different types of Gen AI models. Some are more prompting and some maybe more fine tuning and response models versus intent classification. So each one of these model types have their own strengths and weaknesses and thereby different control approaches. So I think it's important to make sure that we cover every model in isolation, but then we need to wrap the whole solution around with its own controls and rather serious stress testing in order to make sure that the solution overall is unbreakable, even though we have tested and turned every stone with respect to every single component of the solution as well. So that's kind of how we would tackle.
I would like to add one point there. When it comes to data security, I think understanding the infrastructure is very important. What's the data that's being fed to the model? What are your encryption rules? What are your hashing techniques? How are you making sure that your data is anonymized where needed? And also, again, it goes back to the point of how the GenAI team should partner with each and every other team in the organization, especially with the cloud infra team, to make sure that the right infrastructure is set up and you don't have any wormholes or you don't have any public winners that are exposed where it can cause your data leakages. That will be a very big threat for the data security. So again, a lot of points to cover, but yeah, I agree with Gopi and Sami with all their thoughts as well.
Great. Let's go to another question here. This one around communication. So question is, how does generative AI contribute to enhancing communication efficiency within an organization? Anybody want to take that one?
I can maybe start from saying that some of the use cases have to do with knowledge searches, at least investigations for know your customer type of applications. So I guess one could argue that that's efficiency in communication, because the person who does the research can now completely analysis or the report much faster, because the person doesn't need to go to 70 different SharePoints and wherever to look for the files and read them and synthesize. So automating all that definitely enhances the communication from these investigative kind of use cases perspective.
I can add one quick point there. We know that everyone are spending 50% of their time in meetings, and they can go like 1 hour, 1.5 hour, 2 hour meetings, and we lose track of what's the topic, what's the agenda, who's owning what, and what's the outcome of the meeting. Someone needs to take notes. If you put a GenAI on top of that and have it transcribed, and if ask GenAI hey, who spoke about an important point and what's the follow-up discussion that happened, and nicely compose an email and send it. And definitely there should be a human in the loop to evaluate, okay, this is what was discussed, just do a quick evaluation and then send out that communication. That will save a lot of time, remove ambiguity. Everyone will be accountable for what they have discussed in the meeting, so that we have names for each task that needs to get accomplished. So I think that's one great use case where we can save time, bring efficiency, and bring more accountability within the communications in the organization.
Yeah. I mean, the last one I would say is, earlier you need to ask for information, where you look for your CEO on what's update, you look for town hall meetings on what's happening in the organization. So with generative AI, you can have a bot that kind of acts as your news bot for your company and does a lot of communication. We're working on employee communication tools using generative AI that can actually, HR can just simply write the high level notes and then it gives the whole description on what it is, how it will help a department. So I can ask a question, what is the impact of this for my department in my role? So it can provide you a lot of that information. So, I mean, the question is pretty broad. Communication could be anything. So if I'm looking at an employer to employee communication, then yes, we're seeing companies come up in the space doing communication management within the organization.
And with maybe adding a marketing spin to that, I think content creation clearly is a big application of generative AI, how do you communicate to every individual in a relevant fashion? You'll have soon an unlimited amount of ability to customize based on customer behavior, interests, preferences. So I think that'll be a big transformer coming soon.
Let's another great question coming in here around perhaps the steps to successfully implement Gen AI in a business. So maybe a bit about the life cycle. So can you speak to what those steps look like in implementing it?
I can start maybe with taking one use case. So first, identify a business problem that is meaningful and sizable. I feel like maybe going 1 year back, at least I heard many institutions basically looking for a use for this shiny object called generative AI. But I feel like it's maybe now everyone seems to be coming back to say, well, wait a minute, what are my biggest business problems? Let's solve those. And if Gen AI is the right tool, let's use it, right? So, so identify powerful use case, get very top level buy-in, and spend sufficient amount of sizing and make sure that the benefits will be true, because you'll be committing to delivering those. Then once you get the executive buy-in, you tend to get also then SWAT teams created an authority to sort of fast track some of these common sort of like a prioritization required steps, such as getting available technology, getting enough bandwidth from your governance partners, because everyone's busy doing what they do already. But once these use cases get very senior level attention and priority, then these barriers tend to be broken. So now you have a use case identified, you have priority. Then I would say you need a very tight project management, because like I said earlier, these are very cross-functional efforts. So you have many people involved, everybody wanting to do the right thing, and it's super exciting. But there's also very many work streams, and one depends on the other one. So in a way, we go back to the old basics of tight project management, and then with escalation and other good things that come with it, and then tracking the results. Of course, after ensuring that your governance parties, in our case, fair lending, legal, privacy, model, risk governance, have been essentially with you all along and know exactly how the solutions work, and then roll out. I would say, like always, it's probably a good idea to roll out in small doses, maybe for a couple of percent of the file, however you define, and then confirm the success, and then scale up, and then move on to the next one. And I'm sure there are many to go once you solve the first.
Yeah.
I'll add two quick points there. One, at the it's a pre-business use case evaluation phase, I would say. Sometimes business might find it challenging to pick what's the right use case. Like if we look at a company like Kore.ai, which is pretty global, we have like close to 30-40 business teams, and when we ask every business team give me your Gen AI use case, and each business can come back to us with 5, and that goes to like 150-200 use cases. Solving all those will be a very big challenge. So as a technology and as an innovation team, what we do is we put a document which tells how much complexity this initiative is, how much time it takes, what's the human hours that we need to spend, and what's the cost equation. So when we put all these numbers together, we would like to start working on a use case which is easily achievable and has a clear outcome, and we have a clear business value out there. So we do this initial exercise to identify that one use case that the innovation team can right away work with. Again, then you kick off a POC, align with all other teams that I've mentioned before. But when it comes to the final stage of, okay, we have now successfully wrapped up the POC, going into the pilot phase, there should be an intermediate step where we need to bring the users to use the Gen AI application that we created. So having the right metrics to periodically measure how many users are interacting with the Gen AI application, what's their overall sentiment when they are interacting with this Gen AI application. Capturing these two metrics will help us drive the innovation more forward, and any enhancements are needed, we can make those enhancements and then move it to the next level of your dev, test, and prod, the real development life cycle. And this is like, to Sami's point, this is an iterative process. You identify one use case which has quick value, easy to accomplish, and then go through the POC phase, align with all of the teams, and then start measuring how to bring the users back to the Gen AI application for usage metrics. When you put this in loop, I think you iterate, and then that will give you a great successful implementation story that you can scale across your organization.
Let's we got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. Maybe time for one or maybe two more questions here. Interesting one here that's come in. How do generative AI solutions enable businesses to anticipate and adapt to changing market demands and driving competitive advantage and sustainable growth?
Yeah, I think it depends on the business. This is Gopi here. So, for example, I gave you on the e-commerce, right? So it all starts with the friction point, right? Goes back to the previous question. Where is the biggest friction today from a KPI perspective that you're looking at? Every company is benchmarking themselves, and they're benchmarked against other companies. That is the competitive world we live in. So if your goal is to grow the revenue using generative AI, you can do that. The example I gave you with Walmart creating a shopping list for you as an example. So it all depends on the business. Like, we cannot just make a broad stroke on what the answer is. But depending on the business, we're seeing healthcare using generative AI. We're seeing it could be as simple as appointment management. So in healthcare, what we're seeing interesting is, even with so much digital technology, people prefer to make a phone call because the tools don't give you who's the backup doctor, if they're not available. Humans believe you can persuade people by talking to them. So that is why they pick up the phone and dial. And today there is no tool available to automate those things. So it depends on the industry, but we are seeing pretty much every industry is using Gen AI at some level. I don't say they're creating content and generating things like that, but the least thing that you could do is, create a case summary as an example in a contact center, or the same example that Karthik talked about, making a meeting notes of a meeting. And there is not much of a big risk there. The worst case is it may hallucinate, it may not work, but you're seeing the value with it in terms of productivity savings, whether the task took 2 hours earlier on writing meeting notes. Now it's taking 5 minutes because all you need to do is just clean up the notes that's given to you.
And that question sounds like a podcast to me, where we can cover the entire breadth of the Gen AI solutions, right? How they can enable business. But I'll try to answer that in bits and pieces. Market demands, right? So when you say market demands, are you trying to sell your product more? Are you trying to create a more footprint of your product? Are you trying to reduce your marketing spend? Are you trying to bring in new products so that they can do more market penetration? So each and every market demand or market initiative will have many Gen AI use cases. And again, it's a part of the business and the innovation team to sit together and evaluate what's needed. And driving competitive advantage. So again, most of the companies are not openly coming up with like what Gen AI capabilities they have already put into their products. So again, it goes back to how you can create a quick value with easy implementations and see how much of ROI is being generated out of that. That will definitely put us in a more competitive advantage with our competitors. And again, sustainable growth. This is a funny quote I heard. I read when I was going through a book. It's like, one lady says that I don't need Gen AI to create art and music while I'm doing my dishes. I wish Gen AI or AI does my dishes so that I can spend more time on my art and music. So again, sustainable growth, one solution might give a quick win, but that might not be sustainable if you are not continuously measuring how much of dollars you're putting into, and what's the return that you're getting on that. So again, continuous evaluation of a GenAI model, putting that right metrics and measuring them is very, very important to capture that sustainability of the application. Again, it's a podcast. Again, we can go discussing on this like for an hour and two.
That's a great quote, and I think a great way to kind of end this. We've run out of time. We're a little bit over. I'll just extend a big thank you to our panelists. Gentlemen, your valuable insights. Thank you to everybody in the audience for spending time with us today. Today's discussion has not only illuminated the capabilities of Gen AI, but also highlighted some practical strategies for integration. So I hope you leave here today inspired, equipped with more knowledge to explore how Gen AI can transform your own operation and your strategies. So keep pushing the boundaries of innovation in all that you do, and we'll close out with that. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.